Welcome to the second session of the variable framework. So in this second session, we'll be mainly focusing on how do we manipulate the values of the variables and also how do we retrieve the values from the variables. So let's have a quick recap of the first session which we had. So we started with what is the concept of variable. So we said that variables is something that can hold values and that can change its values during the execution of program, and based on that values it can affect the report and its content, and it can affect the behavior of the reports. So we just gave an example of the daybook and we explained that. So the next we went to the types of variable. We saw that we started with the simple variable. A simple variable is a variable which holds a single value of a single data type. Then we went to the simple repeat variable. So simple repeat variable are the variables which holds the method values of the objects of collection based on an implicit index. So we gave an example of a columnar report saying the simple repeat variables are the ones which are used to generate the columns in a columnar report. Then we went to the compound variable. So compound variable is a variable which can hold values of multiple data types. So how we can define a compound variable is by using the attribute variable of the definition variable. Then we saw the list variable. So in contrast to simple and compound variable which have only single instance, list variable is something which has multiple instances. So list variable can hold values of list variable can hold multiple values of either simple, which is either simple variable in nature or compound variable in nature. So based on that we categorize list variable into simple list variable and compound list variable. Simple list variable is one which can hold multiple values of a single data type, whereas compound list variable is a list variable which can hold multiple values of multiple data types. So next we went to the how do we define a variable. So we define a variable by opening and closing the square bracket, inside which we write the variable colon the name of the variable. So this is how we define a variable. So which are the attributes of variables which we saw? We saw the type. Type is nothing but the data type of variable. So type is an attribute which says what is the value, what is the type of the value which will be contained in the variable. Then we saw the attribute default. So default is an attribute which gives an initial value to the variable. Then we saw the attribute volatile. So we saw that volatile is an attribute which accepts a logical value, and when the volatile attribute is set to yes, we saw that the variable will be able to retain multiple values, that is with its original value and subsequent values. All these are stored in a stack. So to give an example, we took a trial balance where we changed the group name in the first look of the trial balance, and we went to the subsequent report. From that we drilled down from the bank accounts and we went to the second report where we again changed the group name, and still we saw that when we went back to the first report, still the group name which we had selected in the first report itself was applied in the report. So that is in cases where a new report is initiated using a volatile variable v from the current report R1, the current value of the volatile variable will be saved as in a stack. That is when you are going from R1 to R2 report, and R2 is initiated from R1 report, and in R1 I have changed the value of a variable. So we change the value of group name variable. We change the value of that variable to current assets in the trial balance in the first report, and we drilled down to bank accounts, and we went to the second report. So when I went to the second report, what happened is, since the group name variable is volatile in nature, so that value of the variable was saved in the stack. Now in my new report, that is the R2, which was initiated from R1, so here I am changing the value of group name again, and now the group name assumes a new value. Example, if I had changed the value in R2 as sales accounts, so now the current value of group name is sales accounts. But still, what happens when I go back to the first report, the previous value of the variable gets restored. So the previous value which was saved in the stack gets restored to the group name according to the report, and then that value gets applied, and thus this volatile nature of variable can be used. So next we went to the persistent nature of the variable. So it is an attribute of variable which accepts a logical value again. So this attribute is something that decides the retention periodicity of the variable. So if this attribute persistent is set to yes, then what happens is the latest value of the variable will be retained across the sessions, provided the variable is not a local variable. That is, to make a variable persistent, that variable has to be a system variable. So what happens is, when you set a variable to persistent yes, whatever value you had set it before closing the application, that value will be stored in a file called tally.save.cfg, and when you open Tally application again, this value will be restored into the variable. So example for this, we gave the SV backup path variable, where the backup path can be retained, or even the company select the company path. When you select the company, the path which you give to select the company, even that variable is a persistent in nature. So then we went to the repeat attribute of the variable. So with the help of a repeat attribute, we create simple repeat variables. So this attribute is mainly used to achieve auto column behavior in various reports. So whatever columnar report you see, that is the auto columnar report which you see, that behavior is got with the help of simple repeat variables. So here each column is created with a subsequent object in a collection automatically, till all the columns required for the auto columns exhaust. That is, here what happens is, the variable holds the method values of the objects of the collection. So the syntax for this, we saw that repeat, we give repeat colon, we give the name of the variable which holds the name of the collection. So we took the example of we repeated the variable over the collection which was a voucher collection, and we saw that how we could take the party ledger name inside. So the next attribute we saw was attribute variable. So if you want to create compound variables, we use the attribute variable and give the variable name. And we also saw how to specify list variable in a compound variable also. We do that with the help of attribute list variable. So next we went to the declaration of scope. So till here we see the definition of the variable. Next we will go to declaration. So declaration is how do you declare a variable. We saw different types in which you can declare a variable. You can say variable colon, give the variable name, or you can say variable colon, variable name colon, its data type, and you can give the default value to it. So there are different ways in which you can declare, and we saw that while declaring, you scope the variables. So we can declare variables in 3 scopes, that is the system scope, the report scope, and the function scope. So in the system scope, the life of what is a scope? Scope is the lifetime of the variable. The lifetime of the variable till when you can access the value of the variable is called a scope. So when you say it is a system scope, that means that till from the time the Tally application starts until it ends, till then uh, the value of the variable can be accessible. That is, till then the variable is alive. And then what is the report scope? Report scope is from the time the report starts until the life of the report ends, till then the variable value can be accessed. And function scope is from the time the function execution starts until the function execution ends, the value of the variable can be accessed. So next we went to we compared the data object and the compound variable. Next we went to actions called save variable and load variable. So why this action was required? First point is why this action was required. So we saw that when I tell a variable is persistent, when I have specified a variable to be persistent, then the value of that variable is persisted in my system. That is, the value of the variable is saved to a file, and again when I open the application, Tally application, again it is restored. So if you want this particular behavior to happen to your report scoped variables also, then you can use this action save variable and load variable, and you can save the variable value to a user specified file, to your specified file, and that file should be of type PVF. So we saw that, and also we saw how we saved the both saved and loaded both system and report scoped variables. So the save variable and load variable, with the help of this we could save the both report scoped as well as system scope variables into a user specified file. So then we went to inline declaration. So till now we were following a two-step process of defining the variable and then declaring a variable. So inline declaration is where in one line you declare both, you define and declare. So we saw that we can do a inline declaration in system scope, report scope, and also in the function scope. So when you do an inline declaration in the system scope, then that particular variable cannot be persisted. So because when you do inline declaration, the properties of the variable becomes very limited. So we saw how we do a inline declaration. We say variable colon, we give the name of the variable colon, we give the type of the variable colon, we give the default value of the variable, which is optional. So next we went to the list variable concept. So we already know that list variable is a concept where you can make the variable hold multiple values of either same data type or different data types. So how do you add these values, these instances to the list variable, or how do you add these elements to the list variable? Is we use the concept of key or index. So key is where user specifies the key for each instances when he adds it to the list variable, which is of type string by default, and its type can be changed. And we saw that it is not mandatory to specify key for each element variable that we add to the list variable. And also it is very important to have a unique key. If unique key is not there, if you specify any duplicate key, then data gets overwritten. Then we went to the concept of index, where we saw that whenever you add an element to your list variable, it will have a internally generated index, and it is consecutive in nature, like 1 2 3 4 5 6. So the indexing follows that nature. So next we saw how we'll specify the path of the variable using dotted notation syntax, where we give the element variable specification dot member variable specification dot simple member value specification. When your element variable specification or member variable specification, when these are compound list variables, then you need to specify your index. So we just gave an example. So in the first example we saw that there is a compound list variable called CLB_emp, and we are accessing the name of the first instance of the compound list variable CLB_emp. So for that we write CLB_emp square bracket 1 dot name. And the second example, we saw how we can access the age of the first relative of my second compound list variable. So for that we write CLB_emp 2 dot relatives 1 dot age. So this is how, using dotted notation syntax, you can access the simple variables which are inside the compound variable or compound list variable. Then we went to the scope specification, where we said by using double dot you go to the owner scope, triple dot you go to owner scope, and by using brackets dot you go to the system scope. And when you use 4 dots, it is owner scope. So this is how you can scope, you can shift to a different scope and get the value of the variables. And you also can give a absolute scope specification by specifying the definition type and the definition name dot the variable name. So we already saw the example where we use 4 fields, where we access the report value, the function value, the system variable value, and also we give absolute specification, and we accessed value from a report as well as we accessed value from the function. So this ends the part 1, and now we will go to part 2. So in part 2 we will be covering the variable manipulations and retrieval methodologies, where we will be seeing how we can add, delete, expand the list variables, and how we can access values from the list variables, and how we can iterate over the list variables, and how we can form a collection out of the list variables, and we'll see how we can sort the list variables. And we'll also be seeing the manipulation of the variables using set, print set, and everything. And we'll also be going through the list variable specific functions, as well as how you can populate a list from a collection. So let's start with the basic variable manipulations. So the first one is, already people must be aware of this. The first one is the report level attribute set. So the report attribute set can be used to specify a variable name and its value, which will be set during the startup of the report. So what is the syntax that will be followed? So the syntax that will be followed is set, and you give the variable name, and then you give the value whichever you want to set to that variable. So there is an example. So you say set var, give the value as ABC. So whenever you're setting values to a variable, you must be very conscious that the value set to the variable is of the data type of that variable. If the variable is of type string, then you set a string value. If the variable of type amount, then you need to set the amount value. So you should be very careful with that. So let us see how we can set the variable value at report level. So from now on, whatever the attributes we get, we will try one by one. In the developer, I'll write one report and one function through which you can understand all these attributes, which will help in manipulating the variables. So we'll add an item to my menu saying variable manipulation. And then I'll just call a function that in turn displays the report. So why I'm writing a function by calling and displaying a report from in the next. For the next attributes, we will have to refer from the function also to understand better. So from here we'll display. We'll give a title to the report. So what we will do is we will define a variable and we'll declare a variable at report scope, or else you can even just give an inline declaration at report scope, and we will set the value at report scope and then we will display the same value in the field. So now what we'll do is we will define a variable report variable, and we will say its type is string. So now we will first scope the variable to the report scope. How we can do is this: we will just write variable colon the report, the variable name, and then here we will set the variable set the variable to report scope variable. And now we will access this variable at the field. So we know that how we access a simple variable is, any variable is using ##. So now let's execute the program. So there is a mistake, spelling mistake, we'll just correct it. Okay, so we have variable manipulation, the menu item which we added, and we have accessed a report scope variable. So we have done the set at the report level. So this is how you do. You say set colon, you give the name of the variable to which you have to set the value, and you give the value that you need to set. So you can set any variable. Either you can set the report scope variable, also you can set a system scope variable also. So the set is done. So next we have something called a print set. A report attributes print set is similar to set attribute, but sets the value of the variable to the specified value, and the report is started in print mode. So if you want the variable to be set with a value only in a print mode, then you can use the print set. So for example, if you are controlling any column, appearance of a column or everything with the help of variable, and you want certain columns to appear only during the print mode, then you can control those columns with the help of the variables, and with using print set you can set the variable to yes or no, with the help of which you can control the column behavior in the print mode. So I'll just give an example to it. So what we can do is, we can just change this variable, report variable, so what I have done is, I have a variable called report variable which is scoped to the report, and I have set, sorry, this would be a print set. I have set the report variable to report scope variable and have done a print set. So when you do a print set, what happens? The value will be the value gets into the variable only when it is in the report is in the print mode. So we see that in the display mode, the variable value is report scope variable. Now I'll print this report. So first we have to add a print button. So now I'll print this report and see what is the value of that variable in the print mode. So if you see, the value of the variable in print mode is in print mode. So if you see our program, what we did print set report variable in print mode. So in the print mode, my report variable, the variable report variable value should be in print mode, and this particular variable is accessed in my field. So if you see the difference, when in display mode, the set value of the report variable is being shown. In the print mode, since I have given a print set, the report variable value is in print mode. So moving on to the next one. So next one, we have a form level set. The form attribute set is similar to report set attribute. While report sets the value once in its lifetime, the form sets the value each and every time the form is executed or refreshed. So similar ways to the report, you also give a set at form level. And what is the use of it is, as whenever the form gets refreshed or re-executed, this value to the variable will be set. So it follows the same nature, same syntax. And then we have a specification of value at the button level. So this how do we set the variable value at a button level is, we do it by using action set. So this is the syntax. Only global variable value can be set using set attribute. So let us see how we can do it. So I have a button set var and I'll give a key. Alt S, and here, so before doing this I need to have a system variable, so here I'll give an inline declaration. I'll tell variable sysvar and tell it as a string. So now what I'll do is, when I press the button, I want to set the variable system variable. So what we have done, we have created a button. We have in button, how do you set a variable is, you use action : set, and you give the variable name and you give the value that you need to set. So we will just try to access this value in a field. So what is the name of the variable we have? We gave system var. We give it here. What we'll do is, we'll give a default value to the variable, and then we need to associate this button in the form level. So if you see, there are two fields and it shows the value as high, which is our default value for the system variable. Now I'll press the button. So when I press the button, the expected functionality is, it should set the system variable to in system. So if you see, it is setting the value of the system variable to in system, which we have done it through action set. So we go to the next one. So here we see that a function level set. So how do you do a set at function level? You use the set action. So all these set will follow, all this set action and set attribute will follow the same syntax. You have to do set, you have to give set, and you give a colon and give the variable name, and you give a colon and give the value. So let's just set a value at function scope. So what I'll do is, so first I'll just give a variable, or is what we will do is, we will set the system variable to, we say set, and we'll set the system variable to some other value. We will say in function. So if you see, what I did was, in the function I set the system variable to in function, and then I displayed the report. So it is set to in function, and since we are accessing the same variable in the field, it shows the value that is changed by the function. So in the function you set a variable in this manner. So next we will see another function level action, that is multiset. So when do you use multiset? It is used whenever you want to set the values of the member variables of compound variable in one go. So what is the syntax of it? It is multiset colon, you give the name of the compound variable and you give the you specify the member name with the value to it. So an example is given here. So let us see how we can do it. So what I have done is I have created a defined variable, compound variable having three variables. Of one is of type string, one is of type number, and one is of type amount. That is basically I'll be setting this variable with the employee name, his age and his salary. So now I have defined it, so I need to declare it. So I have declared it in the system scope. So then next what I have done is I have written a function, and in the function I have written multiset. So what I have done, multiset colon, first is we have to give the compound variable name, that is CVM, then we give the member variable name and its value. So name I have given Rahul, then you have to give comma separated member variable name and value. So next comma age colon 26, and then we will give his salary colon. So now this is the amount, so we will give as amount 10,000. So now what I have done is I have logged this value of the member variables of the compound variable using the dotted notation syntax which we already saw. So what I have done, if I have to access the value of member variable name from the compound variable CVM, how do I access it? I'll tell hash CVM dot name. In the same way, if I want to access the age, I say hash just copy it, CVM dot age. Then I say hash CVM dot salary. So now we will call this function so we are getting the value. If you see, we had set the given a multiset and we gave the compound variable name, and with the comma separated member variable name at its value, we gave the multiset, and then we retrieved the value of these compound variables using the dotted notation syntax. So how do we use dotted notation syntax? Since I want to access the name of from the compound variable CVM, I write CVM dot name. If I want to access the member variable age from the compound variable, I'll first give the compound variable name, then I give a dot, and then I specify the member variable name. So like this I have done multiset and I have accessed the value. So then the next concept is an action called exchange. So the action exchange can be used to swap the values between two variables where both belong to the same data type. This is very important. So in this, with the help of exchange, you can exchange the values of two variables. So the two variables must be of same data type. So you can exchange two variables, exchange the value of two variables using exchange. So we'll see an example here. So what I have done here is, I just comment this and uncomment this. So I have two variables, first var and second var, where I have given a default value, first var and second var, and then I have in the function I have started the message box before the exchange. Before we use the exchange action, what is the value of the variable? So that will be given by the first message box, and then I use the exchange action. So what is the syntax of exchange action? You give exchange colon, you give the first variable name and colon the second variable name. So that is the syntax of exchange. So after how do we get to know whether the variable values are exchanged or not? So to see that, I have used one more message box after executing this action of action exchange, in which again I am displaying the values of both the variables. So let's see what happens. So if you see, before exchange, first var variable has first var as its value, and second var variable has second var as its value. Now let us see what happens after exchange. Okay, so after exchange, what happens? The first var variable has the value second var, and second var value has the value first var. So by using action exchange, you can swap the values between two variables. So here is an again example here where two variables, and also here you can exchange the values of two list variables or two compound variables or anything. So then we have increment action and decrement action, which we'll see. So yesterday we in the last session we already saw how we use the increment operator, increment action to show how the static variable works. So today we'll see how the increment and decrement actually works. So increment is a special action provided in function scope to increment values of the variable. This is supported only on simple variables of type number. So what is the syntax is, you say increment colon, you give the simple variable specification, and you give increment, the number of steps in which you want to increment, that you give as the second parameter. So what is this second parameter is? It can be an expression which evaluates to a number. Based on this, variable value will be incremented, and this is optional, and by default this is 1. So what happens when you just say increment a variable, it'll be increased by one number. If you have given some number here, for example, if you have given 2 here, then the increment of the number happens in steps of 2. So next we have decrement. So it is an action where it decreases decrements the value of the variable. And this also follows the same syntax. So what is the difference between increment and decrement is? Increment increases the value of the number, whereas of the variable, and decrement decreases the value of the variable. So let us see how this works. So I'll use the same function, and I'll declare two variables, increment variable 1, and it should be a type number, we saw that, and I'll give a number 0 to it. So this one more variable will have to explain the decrement operation. So we will start it with 10. So now what we will do is we will put a message box. Or we will just log it. So first one will be, we'll log the increment one, and second we'll log the decrement one. So we have done it first, then we will execute the action which we have to do. So we say increment and we will decrement the So since we have not given the second parameter which says in what number of steps it should increment or decrement, by default it takes 1 as is. So when I execute this function, what should happen? At the end of this function, increment var should be 1 and decrement var should be 9. So let's see if it happens. So if you see, the increment var is 1 and decrement var is 9. So it is happening. So now what we'll do, we'll give a number, we'll give increment by 5 steps and we'll say decrement by 2 steps. So now we have incremented with we are incrementing the variable with 5 steps and decrementing the variable with 2 steps. So now let's see the output of it. So according to us, what should be the output? The output of increment var should be 5 and the output of decrement var should be 8, because the initial value of decrement var is 10. So when you decrement by 2 steps, it becomes 8. So let's see what is the output. So we are getting the result. So this is how you can use increment and decrement. Please keep in mind that you can do increment and decrement only on variables of type number. Next we will see the field level attribute called modifies. So you use the modifies attribute whenever you want to modify the value of the variable with the value of the field. That is, whatever value you enter in a field, if you want to modify that value into the variable, then we use the modifies attribute. So the syntax is modifies colon variable name and a logical value which is optional. So it says that the logical value, when it is true, it would be, the variable would be set to the value of the field after the field's acceptance, and if it is false or if you have not given any second parameter, then the value of the variable will be set after the acceptance of the report. So this is why we give the yes or no here. So we will just see what is how this modifies works. So first thing is, I am opening a report which is in execute mode. So modifies doesn't work in a display mode. So I have in the report, I have 2 fields. In the first field, whatever I am entering, I need it in the second field. So I have in the first field, I have given modifies colon variable name. This variable needs to be defined. So I have defined it in the system scope. And then I have accessed this variable in my second field. And if you observe, I have not given any third parameter. second parameter. So let's see if the value is getting changed or not. So this is what I have given in the first field. So I'll give some field, some name called tally. So now I want this value to be accessed in the second field. So now if you see, it's not coming. So now I'll accept this report and see if I open the report again, is it coming or not. So if you see, if I open the report again, the value is getting accessed. So now what I'll do is I'll give a modify variable, and then I'll give the second parameter, that is, we already saw that if it is true, that is if it is yes, then the value in the variable will get modified to the field value as soon as I accept this field. If I have not specified any second parameter, or if I have specified no, then the value in the variable gets modified with the value of the field only after the report acceptance that we saw just now. So we'll say yes, and then we'll open the report. So if you see, I'll accept this field. So as soon as I accept the field, I am getting the value in my second field. So this says that when I say modifies, when I specify the second parameter to yes, then whatever value I have entered in the field will get modified into the variable as soon as I accept the field. If I have not specified any second parameter, or if I have specified the parameter as no, then the value in the variable gets modified to the value of the field only after the report acceptance. Then we will go to the next concept of where we say copy variable. That is, if you want to copy the content of one variable to another, you can use this. The content of a variable can now be entirely copied from one instance to another instance using the action copy variable. So what is syntax? Copy variable colon, you give the destination variable colon, you give the source variable. So destination variable can be a simple or compound or list variable. Source variable can be simple, compound, list variable from which you want to copy. So the use of the specialty of this is you can copy an entire set of list variable from one list variable to another, a compound variable from one compound variable to another also. Let's see its use. So what I'll do is I'll specify two variables. So I've specified two variables. So let this be source and let this be destination. So from the first one I say my tally, and for second for the destination I won't give any name. So we will see before copy what is the value. And after copy what is the value. So we will say copy variable. So first you give the destination and then you give the source. So I'm copying from source variable to the destination. So first you give destination, and then from where you want to copy, that you give as the second parameter. So I have called this function in my menu item variable manipulation. So first you see, before copy, the source is my tally, the source value is my tally, and destination there is nothing because the value of that variable is empty. And now if you see, after copy, after executing the copy action, then the source is my tally, destination is again my tally because I have copied the value from the variable. In the same way, you can copy. This is where I example where I have copied simple variables. So in the same way, you can copy to from one compound variable to another compound variable also. So you should just keep in mind that the structure of both the compound variables are similar. So if you see here, there is one compound variable employee 1 and one more compound variable employee 2. And then the first employee 1 is already set with the initial value, and the second employee 2 has no values. So with the help of copy variable, we are copying employee 1 values to employee 2. And we can also copy from list variable to list variable. So if you see, there are again two compound variables, employee 1 and employee 2, and then in the function both the variables are specified as declared as list variable, and then they are filling the this is a list fill action which will be going through in the list variable manipulations section. So they have filled the employee 1 details, and then they are copying the employee 1 list variable into employee 2 list variable. So this is how you can use the copy variable action. So next we will be going through the list variable action, where we will be list variable manipulations, where we will be going through how to add, delete, retrieve, sort the list variable elements. So our next topic is list variable operations. So in this topic we will see how we can add elements to list variable, how we can retrieve elements, how we can sort the elements of list variable. So the topics covered in the list variable operations would be adding elements to the list variable, deleting list variable, retrieving value from list variable, sorting of list variable, and we'll be seeing how we can populate list from a collection and how we can create collection from the list variable, and we will also be seeing some list variable specific functions. So first we will see how we can add elements to list variable. So adding elements to list variable, we have the action called list add. So the action list add is used to add an element to the list variable based on the key. So we already are aware about what is a key. So based on a key, if you want to add elements to the list variable, then you use the action list add. And the aliases for list add are list append and list set. So going to the syntax of the list action list add, we have the syntax saying list add colon the list variable specification which you have to give, and then you need to give the key which you want to use to add this particular element, and then you can specify the value which you want to set for that particular element, and you can also specify for which member you're adding the value. So this value and the member both are the value and the member specification, both are optional. So let us see. So the value formula can be an expression which returns a value. It sets the initial value of the element variable and it is optional. And then the member specification. This specification is required only if the value needs to be added to a specific member of a compound list variable. If the member specification is not provided, then the first member variable will be considered for the value. So if your compound variable has some 4 or 5 member variables, and if you want to add value to a specific member variable, then you need to use the member specification. Or else if you don't specify member specification, then the first member available in the compound variable will be set to the value which you have given. So let us see how this works in developer. So let us now see how the list add works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a function list variable operation. And now, so if you want to add elements to list variable, first is we need to define the list variable. So let us keep the list variable as a compound list variable. So first we will create the compound list variable. Let us create a list variable of employees. So variable employee name, and we will capture employee age, we'll capture the employee salary. So now we have defined the compound variable. Now we need to make it as a list variable. So now I am going to declare the variable as list variable in system scope. So how do I define a list variable? Declare a list variable. I say list variable colon the variable name. So what we are going to do is we are going to add a list of employees, and this is the compound variable which will help me in adding the list of employees. So as we saw, how do we use it? We say list add and we give the list variable specification, and then we use the key formula. So list add is used to add elements to list variable using a key. So we'll say list add, and which is our list variable? This is our list variable. And then we need to give a key. So you can give any key which you want. So now I will give a key called I'll give 1 as my key. So then the optional elements, that is, you can give a value to a member. So what I'll do is I'll give a value called Rahul, and for which member variable of the compound variable I'm giving this, I'm giving it to the employee name. So in the same way we can fill all the details of by using the list variable. So now I'll give an employee age of 26. and I'll give a salary. So we know that salary is an amount, so we need to give a, we have to typecast it to the amount. So now what we have done, we have added a element to the list variable with a key 1, and we have filled the details of employee name, age and salary. So we have one element variable in our list variable. So if you now let us add one more element to the list variable. So I've added one more element to the list variable, but I have done a mistake here. So the mistake is I have not given a unique key for this element variable. So now I have to give a unique key. Otherwise what will happen, whatever is the details which is in the key 1 will get replaced with the details of the details which I have given the second time. So now we have done this addition. So now we have to see whether it is added or not. So what we will do is we will give a message box and check if the details are added or not. So yesterday we already saw how do we use dotted notation syntax to retrieve values from compound variable and list variable. So we will use the same dotted notation syntax and check the addition of the elements to the list variable. So if I want to retrieve the employee name of the first element of the list variable CLVM, then how do I write it? I'll write #CLVM1 CLVM1 dot. So we want the first element, so we have written index 1. So we already know that when we add list variables in the order of insertion, the index also gets internally generated. So this particular element will be having an index of 1, and the second element which I added will have index 2. So in the same way, if we have added a third element, that will have index 3, then fourth element will have index 4. So now we will, with the help of the index, we will retrieve the value from the list variable. So I'll say first element of list variable. From there I'll retrieve the name. Employee name. So I have added an item in my menu which calls the function list variable operation. So if you see a list, our element is added, and we are also getting the pop-up correctly. So our first, what we retrieved was, we retrieved the first element which was added to the list variable, the name of the first element of the element added to the list variable. Now you can check by saying second. What is the name of the second element added to the list variable? So you're getting the proper result. So now in the same way, if you want to see employee age, you can change it and see. And now it's coming correctly. We wanted to see the employee age of the second element which was added to the list variable, which is the name Shilpa. So now successfully we have added elements to the list variable using the key. So later we'll be seeing how we can retrieve value from list variable using the key. That we will see in the coming sessions. So we'll go to the next way of adding elements to a list variable. So these are some of the examples we given here. So we already told that if we don't specify any value or member, so what happens is an empty element will be added to the list variable without any value. So if you have added only the value and you have not given the member, then the value will be assigned to the first member of the compound variable. So moving on to the next one. So next one we have the action called list add x. So we already saw action list add where we specified the key. Here there is a action called list add x where you need not specify the key. So action list add x is used on a list variable to add an element to the list variable without a key. So the syntax is almost similar to list add, with an exception that there is no key formula to be given here. And here also we see that value formula and member specification are optional. So if you just say list add x and give the list variable, you just specify list variable, then an element will be added to an empty element will be added to the list variable. And if you just specify value and not give the member, then what happens is the value will be assigned to the first member of the compound variable. So if you want to give the value to a specific member of the compound variable, then you give both the value and the member specification. Let us just see some of the examples. So these are some of the examples which is already given. So now what we will do is we will add element to list variable using list add x. So now let's see how we add an element to the list variable using list add x. So now what we will do is we will add the third element to the list variable using list add x. So what is the specification? We have to say list variable and give the list variable name, and then if you want to give a value you can give, and then if you want to specify the member variable of the compound variable, you can specify. So what we'll do is we won't specify anything. So if you don't specify anything, what will happen? An empty element will be added. So now let us specify only the value. Then we will specify for which, okay, let us not specify for which employee, for which member variable we are adding the name. So let us just see if this works. So according to the theory, if we have not specified the member variable, then it means the value goes to the first variable of the compound variable. So in the first variable of compound variable is emp name, so the value Gayatri should go to the first variable of the compound variable CLV emp. So this is the third element. So let us see the third element. So it is coming correctly. So we have not specified, actually we have not specified the value for which member variable the value should go. So what happens, the first member variable is taking the value. So next we will see the next action which helps in adding elements, that is the action list expand. So the action list expand, it will just add blank elements to the list, and these elements are created without the key. So after you specify list expand and add empty elements without a key, you can later fill the values to the list variable using either list fill, which we'll be seeing later, or with the help of a loop you can add elements. So what is the syntax is? List expand colon, you give the list variable to which you need to add the elements, that is the empty elements, and you give a count telling these many, I want to add these many elements to the list variable. So we'll just see how we can do it. So what we will be needing to do it, we'll just say list expand and then give some count telling I want 4 empty elements to be added. So now what should have happened? We have 1, 2, 3 elements which has some value, and 4 empty elements should have been added. So how do we check if 4 elements are added or not? So we will, there is a function called list count which gives the number of elements that is there in the list variable. So the syntax is, you have to say list count and then the list variable specification. So with the help of this we will check whether 4 elements are added to the list variable or not. So it's added. What was the first 1, 2, 3 we added using this thing, and 4 empty elements are added. So how do we now set these 4 empty elements to some name? So for that we already have a attribute called set which can be used in the function, the action set, we already know. So with the help of action set and dotted notation syntax, we can set values to the empty elements. So we know that from this is the fourth, the empty element starts from the 4th one. So I'll tell CLV emp the 4th element, set the name of the 4th element, so which is already empty. So set it to Rohan. So now what we will do is we will check whether for the 4th element whether the name is set or not. So we will go and see the name of the 4th element is set. So what we did was we added 4 empty elements to the list variable CLVemp, and then for the 4th element of the list variable we set the name of the 4th element of the list variable to Rohan, and when we retrieved and we saw that, we are able to do it. So list expand will actually add empty elements to the list variable without a key, and then you can later fill those empty elements with some value, and also you can specify the key also if you want, with the help of list fill function, which will go through later, and with the help of set, which help of the action set, which you are already aware of. With that also you can set the value to the member variable of the compound list variable. So next we will move on. So these are the three actions which are available through which you can add elements to the list variable. Now we will go to how to see, we'll see how to delete the list variable. So now we have added, now we'll see how to delete. So the action list delete, so we have the action, first action called list delete. So this action is used to delete element from the list based on a key. If you want to delete elements based on a key, then we will use the action list delete. So what is the syntax? We will see. We have to say list delete, we have to give the variable, and we have to give the key, which key which is associated with the element that we want to delete. If you don't specify the key, then the entire list variable will get deleted. So now what we can do is we can check both these operations. So now what we will do, we will say list delete CLVM. So what we'll do, we will just say list delete CLVM. So what is the result of this? The entire list variable should get deleted. So then obviously if entire list variable is getting deleted, you can't access any of its elements. So we will just see what is the count using the function which we already saw, list count, which gives the number of elements available in the list variable. We'll just try to fetch that. So we know that our list count has to actually show, if we don't specify list delete, it should have actually shown 7, which we already saw. Now we'll see what it shows. So it shows 0 because we have deleted all of the list variable. Now what we will do is we will delete a specific list variable. So we will delete the list variable with the key 1. So what should happen? This entire element should get deleted. So remember that if you have added the elements based on the key, only then you can delete those elements based on a key. For example, this third list variable which we added, we added this list variable, that is using list addx, without a key. So this list variable, third list variable, we cannot delete based on a key because this particular list element doesn't have a key associated to it. But I can delete the first 2 elements which we added because I added it based on a key using the action list add. So let us see if this list variable is getting deleted. So what should our list count show now? It should show 6 because I have deleted 1 element. So we are getting the correct one, we are getting 6. So this is how you delete list variable. Either you specify key or without specifying the key. Now we will go to the next one. So the next one is action list delete, we have seen. Now the next one is list delete x. So this list delete x is similar to list delete, but with the help of list delete x, you can delete based on the index and not the key. So if you want to delete some list variable element using a index, then you use the action list delete x. So we can check that also. So what is the syntax? It is the same. You say list delete x, you give the specify the list variable name, and then you give the index. In previously in list delete we gave the key, here we'll specify the index. So what we will do, we'll say list delete x, from this thing delete the third one, or you can say any index, because you know that every element added to the list variable will have an internally generated index. You can now give any index. We already have 7 elements in our list variable, so you can give any index from 1 to 7 and see if the list variable is getting deleted or not. So what we'll do, we'll delete the second and third element of list variable and see if the count is reducing by 2 or not. So the count which was 7 before without any deletion, so now we have only 5 elements in our list variable. So because we deleted 2 of them now. So we have one more thing, is list remove x is an alias of action list delete x. You can use the list remove x also. So let's now moving on. So let's see now how to retrieve the values from the list variable. So we have something called list value. So the function list value is used to retrieve value of an element in the list for a given key. So if you want to retrieve the value of the list variable, of the element of the list variable based on a key, then you use list value. So what is the syntax? List value colon, you give the list variable, you specify the list variable, and then you give the key. You give the key which is associated with the element from where you need to get the value. And we have the member specification which is optional. So what happens is, if I don't give a member specification, then the value of the first member will be retrieved. If you give a member specification, if you want to retrieve the value of a specific member of the component variable, then you specify the member. So let's see some examples. So these are some examples. List value, so CLB emp is the list variable, and hash key value. So this is a one of the simple variable which holds the key, and then there is age is one of the member variables of the compound variable CLB emp. So let us use this and see how the output is coming. So what we'll do is, each time we instead of closing and opening tally, I was closing and opening tallying so that freshly the list variable gets added from index 1. Else what happens is, each time if I'm not closing and opening tally, each time the list variable gets updated. So first I press the item, then 7 list variables get added. Again if I press the item, again 7 will get added. So to avoid that, what we'll do is, we'll delete the list variable and freshly we will add the items to the list variable. So I'll introduce list delete in the beginning of the function. So now what happens, whenever I press the item, whenever I select the item which calls this function, everything in the list variable gets deleted and freshly all the elements get added to it. So next what we have to see is, we have to see how to use the list value. So now we will use the list value and see. So what is the syntax? List value, with the help of list value we can retrieve the value of the element of list variable using a key. So you should know the key to retrieve the value if you're using list value. So next, according to the syntax, next is list variable, specify the list variable, and now you have to give a key. So first what we'll do is we'll not specify the member, we'll just give the key. So we'll give 2. So let's see. So we are getting properly. So what we did, we retrieved the value from the second element of the list variable. So which is the second element? Shilpa. That is the second element from Shilpa. This is the second element of the list variable. And since I have not specified any member variable, so it is taking the value from, it is giving the value of the first member variable, which is emp name. Now what I want is, I want to retrieve emp age. I want to retrieve the age of the second element of the list variable CLV emp. So I am getting the correct answer. So the age of the second element of list variable is 30 and I am getting the correct answer. So this is how you can use the list value. So now what we will do, we'll go to the next way of retrieving the list variable. So we saw the list value. Now we will go to something called a list value x. So this is the function which can be used to retrieve value based on the index formula. We already know how to retrieve value based on index formula using dotted notation syntax. Now you can use the same. You can use list value x and you can retrieve the value. So what is the syntax? It says list value x. You specify the list variable. Then you give the index from where, that is the position of the element from where I need to retrieve the value. And this also follows the same rule. If you don't specify the member, it gets you the value from the first member of the compound variable. If you specify a member, then it gets the value from that specified member. So let's try this also. So now instead of list value, I'll give list value x. And I will retrieve the third. What I want to do is, now I'm retrieving the age of the third element added to the list variable CLVM. So do you think we will get any value for that? So we won't get any value to that because we have not added an age to our third element of list variable. We have added only the name. So let us just see whether we'll get any, what is the output that comes when the value is empty. So 0, because we have not added any. It's a type number, so default for a type number, 0 is the default value, so it's showing 0 because we have not added any value to it. So what we will do is, we'll retrieve the name instead. I want to retrieve the third employee name of the employee name of the third element from the compound list variable. So I am getting it correctly. So this is how you retrieve the value based on an index. So list value function is used to retrieve value based on key, and list value x is used to retrieve value based on an index. So now moving on to the next topic. So we have hash operator. We have already seen that, with help of which we can retrieve the values. So we already know that we have to give we have to give the element variable, which can be compound variable or compound list variable. If it is a compound list variable, if it is a list variable, then you have to specify the index or the position from where you need the value to be retrieved, and then dot you give the member variable from where you need to retrieve the value. So if that member variable is again a compound variable or a compound list variable, then you specify the index in case of list variable, and again you give a simple member value. So we know that the index can be either positive or negative. If it is positive, then the traversing will be from top to bottom. If you give negative, then the traversing will be from bottom to top, that is the reverse. So now we saw the indexed based also. We are index based retrieval using hash. We are also aware of this already. Now we will go to a looping construct, foreign and for each. So we now added all the list variables. So if we want to see all these, if we want to iterate over all these elements added to the list variables and see what is added, we can use this foreign for each. So you can basically use this if you want to log all the elements or something like that, you can use this foreign and for each. And if you want to log into a file and open it, for all those purposes, you can use foreign for each, which is a looping construct to iterate over the list variable. So basically we have seen all the list variable adding, deleting now, and retrieving. We are going through that. So in default, if we see where the list variable is used, so you have already seen, you would have seen the price list. How do you give a price list in the company? So if you go to this, if you go to the price list, if you see this screen, this values, whatever you enter, are actually being captured into a list variable. So this is an application of the list variable, we can see. So what happens is, these whatever values we enter are being added into a list variable, and later with the help of the list variable, this is added into the, so where is the price list object which is present? Price list is a sub object under the stock item. So under the stock item, so for whichever item you put the price list, so for the under that item, these values which are available in the list variable are again transferred to the under the object price list in the stock item. So this is an application where from you get the values into a list variable, and with the help of the values in the list variable, you add it somewhere, or with the help of that you manipulate something. So this is an application of list variable. So we already know that variables are context free structure, so you can use it anywhere you want. So now moving on, let us see how do we use foreign and for each, and what is the syntax. So foreign loop is used to iterate over the values in the list variable, and number of iterations would obviously depend on how many elements are there in the list variable. So foreign, for each, both are aliases of each other. So what is the syntax? Foreign, you give a iterator variable and you give the list variable name over which you want to iterate. So then iterator variable, what is this iterator variable? It is the name of the variable which holds the key value in every occurrence of the iteration. So it will hold the key variable, whatever the key you have given for the list variable when you are adding, so that key will be present in this variable. So then you give the list variable name, which is a compound list or a simple list. So we will just try doing it. We'll follow the same syntax. So now we have added so many list variables. We'll see if we can retrieve it using for each. So what I'll do is I'll add one more function. List variable retrieval. So I have this. Now what I have to do is I will just use the foreign loop and just iterate over it and log whatever is present in the list variable, in this list variable, and see what is the output. So now I have given, okay, I have to give the variable. So we will just give a variable name keyvar. So we will just log. So we already know how to retrieve the value using the key. So which is the function which helps to do it? It is the list value x. Sorry, it's the list value. So with the help of list value, I'll say get it from this variable. So where is the key? The key is already there in keyvar. You need not set anything to keyvar. Already internally it knows that whatever variable you give after foreign, that will have the key. That will whenever it iterates over each element, so the keyvar will get the value automatically from the elements of list variable. The key will be already got into the keyvar. So we have to do and for. So let us see what this will give us. So retrieval. Okay. So we get only Rahul and Shilpa. Why is it so? So we have added actually 1, 2, 3 and 4, actually 7 elements to the list variable, but I get only 2 when I retrieve using foreign. So that is because foreign loop construct will iterate over the elements of the list variable which has a key, for which you have specified a key. So when we added elements to list variable, we added only 2 elements with a key. So when using foreign for each looping construct, only those 2 elements are being considered because only those have the key. So foreign and for each will iterate over the elements of the list variable which has a key associated with it. So now let us go to the next part. So the next topic is sorting of the list elements. So what is the default order of sort which happens in the elements of list variable is the order in which you insert the elements, the same order will be there in the list variable. So the default sorting order of elements in list variable is the order of insertion. So now let's see how we can change this sorting order with the help of different actions. So initially when the list variable is created, it is sorted on the order of insertion. So there are 3 actions with the help of which we can change the sorting order. They are the list key sort, list value sort and list reset sort. So let's go to each of them one by one. So the first one is list key sort. So what does it do? The action list key sort allows the user to sort the elements of the list based on the key. So we know that we can add elements based on the key, and we can also retrieve elements based on a key. All these elements can be sorted with the help of this action. So what is the syntax? The syntax is list key sort colon the variable name, the list variable name, and there are two optional parameters. One says ascending or descending flag. So how do we give this flag? Is we specify yes or no. If you say yes, then the sorting will be done in ascending order. If you tell no, then the sorting will be done in descending order. So if you have not specified any flag, then the sorting happens by default in the ascending order. So next we have the key data type. So if you remember already in the list variable session concept, when explaining the concept of list variable, we said that list variable has a default data type, that is string. So this data type, you can override it by specifying it as number during the sorting. So by if you have specified the keys as 1 2 3 4 5 6 or in some numbers, then if you want to sort it over that on that number, then you can say the key data type is number and sort it on it. But by default it is string, and if you have not specified any key data type, it will be taken as string. So let us see how the list key sort can be done. So we already have added two keyed elements to our list variable. So what we'll do is we'll add two more keyed items to our list variable so that we can understand the sorting better. We'll just change the names of it. So let's give the keys as random. First I have given as 5, then I have given 2 for Shilpa as the key. So here we will give something like 1, and then we will change this to 9. So the insertion order of elements in our list variable is it starts from Rahul, then Shilpa, then Vimal and Vijay. So when we do this list key sort, and I'll be doing a list key sort on this list variable, and the key data type I'll give as number so that I can sort it based on the number. So based on the key which is a number, how the sorting will happen. If it is in ascending, then starting should be Vimal, then it should be Shilpa, then it should be Rahul, then it should be Vijay. So first we will write the function that will do this for us. We'll write a function list variable sort. So here we will write list key sort. So what is the syntax? The syntax is, first you have to give the list variable name, and then we should say whether it is ascending or descending, which is optional. So we will give yes, that is we want it to be ascending, and then we will give the key data type, which is number. We will tell it is a number so that we can have a ascending order on number. So let's call this function. So So now we have done all these things. Just for a check, what we'll do is we'll give a message box in the function which we are adding the keyed elements. So we'll see whether our keyed elements are added or not. So first what we have to do is we have to first select the item in the menu which calls the function where I'm adding the keyed elements, and then we will select the item of the menu which sorts the elements and displays it. So in the sorting function, what I have done, I have just applied the action list key sort on our list variable in ascending order, and key data type I have given as number, and then I'm iterating over the list variable clv_emp with the help of our looping construct, that is for in, and there I'm logging each value of elements of the list variable clv_emp, and here by using list value. So list value picks up the value from the elements of the list variable based on the key. So our key is already there in this variable keyvar, and I have not specified any member variable here. So if I have not specified any member variable, then the first member variable of the compound variable will be taken, and the value of that variable will be displayed. So let us see the output. So let us first go to the item which adds the list variable. So okay, there are now, we added 2 extra. Already we had 7 elements in list variable, we add 2 extra, so there are 9 elements in list variable, so it is correct. So now let's go to the list variable sort. So it is sorted on the list on the key of type which is number, and we have the order as Vimal, Shilpa, Rahul and Rohan. So let us see. So according to us, it should be Vimal, Shilpa, right, Rahul, and it is showing Rohan instead of Vijay. So let's see why it's happening. Okay, so we have set the fourth element, the name of the fourth element of the list variable to Rohan. That's why the name Vijay has been rewritten to Rohan. So that's why we are getting this order, and the order is correct. So first Vimal, then Shilpa, then Rahul, then actually instead of Vijay, Rohan is coming because we have set the fourth element to Rohan. So this is how list key sort works. So now let us go to the next sorting method, or the sorting action. So the next sorting action is list value sort. So we saw a sorting which sorts the elements of list variable based on the key. Now we have the action list value sort, which allows the user to sort the elements of the list based on the value. So based on the value, based on the value of any member variable. So list values, what is the syntax? List value sort, you give the list variable specification, and after that you have optional parameters, of which first one is ascending or descending flag, which has the same characteristic as the list key sort, and then key data type, it's also the same, and then we have something called member specification. So member specification is, you will specify any member of the compound variable on whose value you want to sort the elements. So member specification is the member specification in case of compound list. If not specified, then the list is sorted by the value of the first member variable. And then we might have concerns of duplicate values in the for example, if we are sorting our list variable based on the name of the employee, and if two employees have the same name, so in case of duplicate values in the list, the key data type passed is considered to sort by key, and then and if there is any absence of key, then the insertion order is used. That is, if you have two elements in which, if you're applying a list value sort on a list variable and on the member employee name, and if in case in the list variable there are two elements with the same employee name, then what happens is, whatever key data type you have specified, if you have specified number, and if those two elements have a key, then based on the key those two elements will get sorted. And in case in those elements either one doesn't have a key or both doesn't have a key, then in that case, based on the insertion order, those two elements will get sorted. So let us see how this works. So we will apply list value sort on CLV-emp. So what is the CLV-emp? We have to give the list variable, then ascending or descending. So we have given yes. So instead of we'll give yes, and later we'll set it to no and see the result. Then key data type is number, and then member specific. You can specify a member. If you don't specify the member, then the first member of the CLV-emp, on that the sorting will happen. So let us specify a member. And then let's see how the sorting happens. So the output would be, let's see the output. So according to us, what will be the output? So it is in ascending order of the letters. So it should be Rahul, then Rohan, then Shilpa, then Vimal should come. I'm telling Rohan because we have set the fourth element to name Rohan. So to avoid confusion, we can just comment this and see what is the output. So let's just see how many. So 9 variables are there, 9 elements are there, then sorting. Okay, so according to us it should be Rahul, then Shilpa, then it's Vijay, then Vimal. So let's just change the names so that to see if it is coming in alphabetical order. So let's make it Abhaskar. Let's make it Nama. Let's put this as Deepak. Then let's put something in C as Chetan. Okay. So now we have changed the name so that we will get if it is happening in alphabetical order or not. So we will now add it. So we have 9 elements, and now we will sort it. So it's happening according to alphabetical order, A, B, C, D. It's happening. So now what we will do, we will just make it no and see if the sorting is happening in the reverse order. So it's happening in the reverse order. So this is how you can use the list value sort. So but what happened here was we used for in to log the information. So for in, what it does, it iterates over the elements of the list variable which is only keyed. But what if we want to iterate over all the elements of the list variable, because list value sort is applied on all the elements of list variable. So instead of for in, we will use a while loop. So we will just say variable count, and we will use a method formula, I mean the dotted syntax. We'll have one more. So first is so what we will do first is we will set the list count sorry, I have to set the list count variable to the list count of the, I mean number of elements which is in the list variable. Then we will say while the count is lesser or equal to list count, give me the information. So let's log all the info. How do we use the dotted notation syntax? We say hash hash, then I'll say clvm. So I have a count which gives the index, so I will go by the index so that I can access all the elements, and I'll say give me the emp name. Then next step is to increment. We have already seen the increment action. So I'll increment so that after every element the count gets increased, and we can go to all the elements. And while so in our list variable we have actually 9 elements. We have 9 elements with 4 keyed, 1 without a key, and 4 empty elements. So on 4 empty elements there will be no action that's happening. So there are 5 elements which has some value in it. So we should be able to view all those 9 elements. So let's see what happens with this. So if you see, so we are actually we did a list value sort on emp name, and we sorted in the descending order. So according to descending order, G comes first, then D, then C, then Bhaskar, then Nama. And if you see, there are 4 more logs that is there, and those 4 are the empty elements which is coming at the end. So this is how you can do list value sort, and by using a simple while loop and using a count, you can access each element of the list variable. So the next action for sorting is list reset sort. So what does it do? It resets the sorting method of the list and brings it back to the insertion order. So we already told that by default the elements in the list variable will be sorted by insertion order. So if you want to bring back the elements after doing some sorting on it back to insertion order, you just have to use this action. So what is the syntax? List reset sort colon the list variable, a very simple syntax. So let us just try it. So we had done a list value sort in our function. What we'll do is we'll do a list reset sort and see if it is in the, if it comes back to the sorting order. So what we will do is, so what is our sorting order? Bhaskar, Annama, Deepak, Chetan, Gayatri. So this is our sorting order, and after Gayatri there are 4 empty elements. So when we did list value sort, we already saw what was the result. Now we will do a list reset sort and get it back to the insertion order. So let's see. So if you see, it is in the insertion order. We added Bhaskar first, then Annama, then Deepak, then Chetan, then Gayatri, and we have 4 empty elements. So it's back to the insertion order. So this is how the sorting happens. So we'll just revise once till now whatever we did. So we first started with, in the list variable operations, we started with list add. So we saw that what list add does, it adds element to the list variable based on key. And then by the syntax is this list add colon the list variable you have to give, then the key formula, the key whichever you want to specify for that element, and then you give value and member, which is optional in nature. So if you give a value and not a member, then the first member of the compound variable will get the value, and if you want to give a specific value to the member, then you give a member. In case you don't give any value or member, then a blank element will be added to the list variable and it will be associated with the key whichever you have given. Later you can use, with the help of the key, you can operate on the blank element. So next, after that we saw list add x, where you add an element without a key, and we performed that also. So syntax is list add x, and you give list variable, then you give value and member. So these two, value and member, are optional here also, and it follows the same nature as the list add, just that if you don't specify value or member, an empty element to the list variable will be added and there will be no key associated with it because we don't give any key here. And then we went to list expand, where you just add empty elements to the list variable. So there, and again here there is no key associated, and the syntax is list expand is to give the list variable specification and the count, the number of empty elements you want to add, that will be the count which you will give in the count formula. So next we saw the delete. How do you delete the list variable? So we saw first action list delete, which deletes the list variable based on the key. So if you specify a key in the syntax, then the element having that key will get deleted, and if you don't specify any key, then the whole of the list variable gets deleted. Then we went to list delete x, where you delete the element of list variable based on the index. So we already know when elements are added to the, all the elements added to the list variable will have a internal key generated. So when you can, if you specify index, that the element with that index gets deleted. If you don't specify index, again all the list variable gets deleted. Then next we saw how to retrieve the values from list variable. So we were already aware of how to retrieve value using the dotted notation syntax with the hash, which is the modifier. So now we will see how we can retrieve a single value from list variable using other functions. So So there is list value, which is a function used to retrieve the value of an element from the list with the help of a key. So with the help of a key, when you can retrieve the value from the list variable. And here there is an optional member specification. If you give a member specification, then the value of that member will be retrieved. If you don't give, then the value of the first member of the compound variable will be retrieved. So then we have retrieving value from list variable using list value x. Here we retrieve the value from list variable without specifying a key, that is we specify index and get the value. And the syntax is one change between list value and list value access. Instead of key, you give the index. So next is the hash operator. We are already aware of this. So then we went to foreign and foreign or for each, which are aliases of each other, the looping construct, which will help us in iterating over the list variable. And we can iterate over the list variable based on the key. That is, only those list elements of the list variable which has a key associated with it, only those variables can be iterated over. We saw that the syntax is foreign, the iterator variable and list variable name. So then we went to sorting of the list elements. The default sorting of the elements of list variable is the insertion order. So if you want to change the sorting, we have list key sort, value sort and reset sort. You go through list key sort. So with the help of which user can sort the elements of the list based on the key. So you can ask what happens if the element is not added with the help of key. So then what happens is, if the element is not added with the help of key, then those elements will be sorted in their insertion order. So you can sort with the help of list key sort action, you can sort the elements either in ascending or descending order of the key. Then we have and we also saw in list key sort, we can override the key data type. If the key data type by default is string, but you can say number and override that key data type, and based on the number data type, the elements of the list variable can be sorted. So next we saw list value sort. So this allows the user to sort the elements based on the value. So in this list value sort, you give ascending descending sort, you give the key data type and the member specification also. So in this particular list value sort, if there are two elements or two or more elements with the same value, then those elements are sorted based on their key data type, based on their key. And in case those elements do not have a key, then the elements are sorted based on their insertion order. Then we went to list reset sort. So if you want to reset your elements or the sorting order of your elements of the list variable to its order of insertion, you can use list reset sort. So till now we saw all these things. So before we go to the next topic, so let us see how we can add elements to list variable having one more list variable or compound variable inside it. So now we'll create a list variable under this list variable. So what we'll do, till now we captured the employee details. Now we will also capture the details of the relatives of each employee. So what we'll capture is, we'll capture the name of the relative and the age of the relative. So first we will say list variable relatives, and then we'll create the list variable, create the compound variable relatives. So we will have relative name, which is of type string, and we will have relative age, which is of type number. So now what we have created a hierarchy, that is there is a compound variable which has a list variable inside it, which is again a compound variable which has name, which has string and number data type inside it. So if I have to access the relative information, I have to go through this compound variable. So first we will see how we can add the information of relatives to each component. We can add in different ways. So I'll show one way in which we can add. So firstly, in our function we have added some nine elements with 4 blank elements. So let us not have the blank elements. Let us just delete the blank element and just have proper elements in our list variable. So now we will add relatives information to our first element of list variable. So we will use list add and add it. So now we have already added the employee information. So now we are adding the relative information to the first employee. So how will we do? We'll use the dotted notation. We'll say for the first element of the compound variable, add the relatives, add the list variable, add an element to the list variable relatives. Then the syntax is the same. You can give a key. If you don't want to give a key, you can use list add x instead. So now I'll give the value. So first relative of Bhaskar, we can make it as Neha. And if you don't specify for which variable, the first variable of the compound variable will be assigned the value Neha. So that is relative name. So we will just give an, so we'll give the member specification also. Now we will add the age for Neha also. So we will say 18, and that is to the relative age. So now let us see if we have added this information or not. So what we will do, we will present a message box where I am displaying, with the help of dotted notation syntax, I am displaying the name of the first relative of the first employee. Okay, so I will also display the age. Let us see if our relatives information is there or not. Okay, I did a mistake here. This has to be R1, 18 for the So we have added the relative information for the first employee, first relative information to the first employee. So this is how you can add a list variable inside a list variable. So in the same way you can create an hierarchy like this. So in the same way, if you want to create more relatives to the first element, you can create more, you can add more elements. In the same, if you want to add more add relative information for each element, you can do that also. So here we are writing list add and writing it. Instead of that, you can use a while loop and add information to the list variable also. So if you want to just see how you can add information to the list variable using while loop, we can do that. So say we want to add some 10 variables, some 10 elements. So I'm just showing an example to you. So we can, instead of the logging, we can just let the logging be there. So we can use either list add or list add x and add the values. So now I'll use list add x. So what is the syntax? We will go to the list variable and then we specify the index. So we'll have our count as the index. And then we will specify the value. So we'll just give one value saying tally. And to employee name. So let's not give tally, let's give something else. Oh sorry, there is no index. Index happens implicitly. My bad. So let us see when I'm running this function if 10 list variables are getting added. I mean 10 elements are getting added to the list variable. So we will call it here itself. So anyways, we are logging the information. So if you see, there are 10 elements which we created using while loop. So now we have created in the same way. If you want to add the relatives information to this each employee, you can do that also. You can create one more while loop and add the information. So for that you will have to keep one more count variable, and using that you can add the relatives information to each employee. So now let's move on to the next topic. So the next topic we'll be going through is populate. How do we populate the list from a collection? So we can do it by using the action list fill. So if you remember, we had already spoken about list fill when we were seeing the list expand action, where we can add empty elements, and then with using the list fill you can fill those elements with this value. So here we can fill the value to the elements of the list variable from the collection. For example, you can do it either so let us take an example where we want to fill our list variable with the name and the closing balance of all the ledgers. Let us try how to do it. So how do we write the syntax? List fill, we give the list variable specification and we give the collection name from where we are fetching the value. and we give the key formula and the value formula, which are optional. If you don't give any of these, then only empty elements will be added to the list variable. So how much the number of objects present in the collection, the same number of empty elements will be added to the list variable. So then we have the key formula, which is either you can specify or usually the key formula is some expression which is evaluated in the context of the object in the collection. For example, if you are fetching the value from ledger collection, so you can give the key formula as $name. So then each element will have the key, a unique key of the name of the ledger. Then we have the value formula, that is whichever value you want to fetch from the collection, that you give here in the value formula. And we have the member specifications. If you want to add the value to a particular specific member, you can give the member specification, or else the first member of the compound variable will get the value. So in case you don't give the value formula, what happens is the elements will be added to the list variable with the key. So let's see how to use the action list fill. So let us write a new code. So I'll write a variable, a compound variable. I'll just call it as ledger details. You can capture the information from collection to list variable for various purposes, for manipulating the information or rendering the information in a different format. So we'll have the ledger balance, which is of type amount. So now we have defined the compound variable. We need to declare it saying it is a list variable. So we'll declare here saying list variable and give the name. So now we have created the list variable. Now we need to create the collection from where we need to fetch the value. So I'll create a collection of ledgers, a simple collection. So type is ledger, and then we'll just fetch the information. We want name and closing balance. So next we will write a function that will fill this information for us. So how do we write the list fill action? List fill, then we give the name of the list variable, then we give the collection from where we need to fetch the values into the list variable, then we give the key formula which gets evaluated in the context of the collection. So if I give $name, then each element will have the ledger name as its key. Then which value I want to fetch, I'll first fetch the name of the ledger, and to which which member variable of the compound variable you want to put to lead name. If you don't specify a member variable, then the first member variable will get the value. So we will do this, and we will also fill the list with information of the closing balance also. So $name. So obviously we want to fill the information with the same key. that is one element. An element should have, the same keyed element should have the name of the ledger as well as the closing balance of the ledger. So we need to fetch the closing balance. So here the key will help in identifying for which element the second list fill should happen. Since I have given the same key, so already first the list fill would happen for the list variable ledger details, and with having a key of ledger name. So now I am again filling the list variable with the ledger name. So whichever name is the same, so for that particular element the closing balance will be assigned, and we will assign it to the second member variable let balance. And then we want to check if the values are present or not. So what we will do is we will log the values. So we will just have count. So we have already done this logging. We will just copy paste and do it here. So we will just log the details of the lead name and see if our list variable is filled with the values from the collection ledger. Let's just see. So all the information is done. So now what we have to do is we need to call this function. So we'll go to the menu, we will add an item that will call this function. List variable fill. So we have done that. So now we will go to our tally, and first thing what we will do is we will see how many ledgers are there in our company. So I have some 52 ledgers, so 52 list variable elements have to be added. So let's do a list fill. Okay, so exactly 52 elements are added in my list variable and the names are being displayed here. So now what we will do, we displayed the name. Next we will just go and display the lead balance. So even the lead balance is being displayed. So if you want to display both of them, we can also display both of them to see if the balances are right. So 104 line items need to come in the log screen. So we are getting it. So let us just cross check. Let us see if the sales accounts ledger sales has 60 as its closing balance or not. Let's go to account books, let's go to ledger, and let's go to sales. So it's correct. The ledger sales has closing balance of 60. So the information is correct. So this is how you fill the list variable with the values from a collection. So you would have made some collection out of Excel, out of information from Excel or XML, and you want to manipulate the information or something. So in those cases you can use list variable and manipulate the information and render it in whatever format you want. So now let's go to the next. Okay, this is a very important concept. So here we will see how to make a collection from the variable. Till now we added information to the list variable, and we saw how we can iterate over it and get the values and everything. So but if you want to use this entire set of list variables somewhere, example, if you want to display this information of the list variable in the form of a table. If you want to make a table out of whatever value is there in the list variable, how will you do it? So we can display, to display a table you need a collection. So if you want to display a table of the values in list variable, then you should have the option of making a collection out of list variable and then displaying it. So we can make a collection from list variable, and we can use the collection like how you use all the default collections. So you can display it in the table, or you can repeat the line over the collection. So all these things can be done if we can hold these elements of the list variable or this list variable in one place in the form of collection. So that is why we have the option of making a collection from list variable, so that we can hold all these elements in the list variable in one place and use it as a table, or use it in a report, or use it for any other purposes, any other purposes for which a collection is used. So let us see how we can do it. So using the collection attribute data source, variable elements are gathered as objects in the collection, and their respective simple member variables are available as methods, and the list variables will be treated as sub collections. So you must be already aware of this object, collection, and the hierarchy which is there default in Tally. So even here it will be the same. So if you have a compound variable, then the elements, the list variables, all these elements are gathered as objects. Each one becomes an object, and whatever the simple member variables which is there, that becomes the methods, and whatever the list variables which is there, that becomes the collection. So in the example which we saw, where we added employee details, and for each employee details we added the relatives details. So if we are forming collection out of this list variable, what happens? So each employee becomes an object, and we have since we have a relatives list variable inside each employee, so this relatives list variable becomes a collection inside the employee. So how do you write the collection? You data source type. In ours, the type is variable, and then we will write the variable name. Encoding is not applicable to us because our data type is not of type XML or HTTP XML. So we will see how we can do it. So we will use the already available list variable, that is CLB_emp, and we will see how we can form a collection out of it. Collection from a variable. Okay, so first we need to write a collection. So we will say employee list collection. Then type, how do we write it? We write data source, and then we write variable, and then what is the variable name? It is CLB_emp. So let's just go to this variable and see what are the details there. So what happens? These three variables become, these are simple variables, so they become the methods, and this list variable which is relatives becomes a collection, in which in which there are two more simple variables. So in this collection of list variables, which is also collection of object, each relatives object, and in each object of list variable there will be two more methods, that is relative name and relative age. We will see how we can go through all these information and fetch it. So now I have the data source here, so now I'll just fetch all the information. So what are the information in CLV we have? We have emp name, we have emp age. So let us see what else is there. We have emp salary, and then we have the information of the list variable relative. So let us first fetch all these information and see whether it is coming. So now I'll first show how we can use this, how we can repeat the line over these, how we can repeat the line over the collection of this and display each information. So I already have a report. So I have a report in which there is a part and there is a line. The line is repeating over a collection. Let's repeat the collection over, let's repeat the line over this collection. And now we know that the values are, the simple member variables become the methods. So we can access it using, how do you access method? You access method using dollar symbol. So we can use the dollar symbol here also. So we'll display the information in the field. This is an amount field. So what we have done, we have a first we created a collection with the data source as our employee list variable, and we fetched all the three information of the name, age and salary from it. So because we already know, we know that we can fetch methods in collection. So since our list variable is treated as objects, so all its simple member variables become the methods, and so we are fetching it. And then we have a report in which a line is repeating over that particular collection, and in the field you access the simple member variables using dollar symbol, because those are now the methods. And in this particular collection you can use all those attributes of the collection which you are already aware of, which you would have already gone through in the data in the objects and collections class. This is you can treat this as a normal collection, and you can manipulate it and use it the same way how you use the normal collections. So now let's see if this report is added somewhere. It's added here. So let's just change it to employee report. So first we need to add the value. So let's go to the list variable operation and add it. Okay, so let us change this. I have called a wrong function here. Okay, let's call this function which adds specific employees. So if you see, whatever we added, it is coming here. So we have added here 1, 2, 3, 4. We have added Gayatri, Chetan, Deepak and everything. So whatever we added, now we are displaying it in the report. So how this we could do by using the data source attribute of the collection. So this is how you can display a report. So now let's go to one more. So now we already have the collection. Now if we want to display it as a table, so how can we do it? So now let us see how we can use this collection as a table in a field. So for that we will just write a report. Employee list with the field, we will just see how we can display the table. So there is a part, and in the part we have a line, and in the field, in this particular field, we will display the table. Sorry, it's table. We will give that collection which we have created using the data source of variable. So now our expectation is, in this report the field should display the list of the employees. So we will execute this report. So okay, T4 duplicate description name report. So let's go there. I'll just close this. Okay. Okay, now let's see. So which is our variable table. So let's see if it is coming. It's not coming. So why it's not coming? We have to give, in the collection we have to give specify format. Emp name, comma 10. So first we'll add the list variables. I think there is no list variables elements there. So we are getting the names of the employee. So now let us move on to the next topic, which is list variable specific functions. So the first list variable specific function is list key. So the function list key, it returns the corresponding key for the given index. So if you want to find out the key for the specific index, of the element of the list variable, you can use list key and retrieve its key. So the syntax is you say $list key. The first parameter is the list variable. The second parameter is the index. So the next function is list index. That is, if you know the key of the specific element of the list variable and you want to find out what is the index of this particular element, then you can use list index and find out the index of that element. So the syntax is $list index. The list variable is the first parameter. Second parameter is the key of that particular element. And the next one is list count, the number of elements. If you want to know the number of elements of the list variable, you use list count. So we have already used this in our in certain functions in our previous chapters. And then next function is list find. That is, if you want to check if a given key exists in the list or not, then you use this particular function. So by using this particular function, you can find out if a particular key is existing in the list variable or not. That is, so it will return a logical flag indicating the existence of the key. If that keyed element is already present, then it gives yes. If that key is not present, then it returns no. So the so the syntax is $list find. First parameter is the list variable and the second parameter is the key formula. So this key formula can be any expression that evaluates to a string value. And then the last list variable specific function is the list value find. So this, with the help of this function, you can check whether a given value already exists in the list or not. So the syntax is list value find. Then you give the name of the list variable and then you give the occurrence. That is, if you want to find out if a specific value is occurring first time or second time or third time, then you can give that occurrence specification in the occurrence specification flag, and then you give the value which you want to find in the list variable, and then you can give the member specification. So the value of which member you want to find, that can be given in the member specification. So let us apply each of these and see how we can use it. So first we will start with the list key. So we know that if you know the index of the list of the element of the list variable and you want to find the list key, the key of that element, then you can use the function list key. So we already have a list variable CLB in which we have added elements. So we can just find out the key of the list of any list variable. So we will see. So this Bhaskar is our first list variable whose key is 5. So let us find and this is the first, it has the index 1. So let us find the list key of this particular element. So let's just log it, $list key. Then we give the list variable name, that is CLV, and then we give the index, that is 1. So let us see if we are able to retrieve this value. So we have called this particular function in list variable operation. So we are getting the correct answer. So Bhaskar was the first. We wanted to know what is the key of the first element of the list variable CLVM, which is 5 and which is correct. So now let us go to the next variable specific function, that is list index. So list index returns the index of the element of the list variable whose key is already known. So I'll just change this. Now I'll retrieve the index of the list variable whose key is 5. So we are getting it correctly. The index of the element with the key 5 is 1. This is the 1. So now let us go to the next function, which is the list count. List count, we have already seen how we can see the count number of elements which is available in the list variable. So next we will see list find. So this function, this will check if the particular key is it existing in the list variable or not. So the syntax is list find, give the variable and list variable and you specify the key. So list find CLVM 5. Let us see if in CLVM 5 is whether the key 5 is present or not. So this will return a logical value. If it is present, it says yes. If it is not present, it will tell no. So it says yes. Now let us just change it to 10 and see if the key 10 is present in the list variable or not. No. So 10 is not present in our list variable. Even we know that 10 is not present in our list variable. So this is how you can use the list find function. So next we will see the next list variable specific function, list value find. So the syntax, so this is used to check if the specific value is existing in the list or not. So the syntax goes like list value find, you give the list variable specification, then you give the occurrence of the value you want to find out, and then you give the member specification. If your list variable is a compound list variable, then you give the member specification. So let us see how you can do it. So we will say list value find and we give the first occurrence of Annama. So we will find if the value Annama is existing in the list variable or not. Since our list variable is compound list variable, we will use the member specification. Now let's find out if this is existing or not. Yes, so Annama is present. So let us just write something else and check if that is present or not. So let us check if the value Rohan is present, first occurrence of Rohan is present or not. So in our list variable there is no value called Rohan, so this particular function should return no. So it returns no. So in this way you can use this function list value find. So now we have come to the end of the second session of manipulations of the variables. So let us have a quick recap of what we studied in the manipulation of the variables. So we started with a small recap of the part 1 and then we continue to the variable manipulation. So we started with the set attribute. With the help of set attribute at report level, you can specify the value of a variable, and with the help of print set you can set the value of the variable, and this will be the value of this variable will be set only in the print mode of the report. And in form level there is a set attribute with which you can set the value of the variable, and this is in contrary to the set attribute which is at the report, this value will get refreshed whenever the form gets refreshed. And then we saw the action set with which at the button level, with which you can set the value of a variable at the button level. And then we saw the set attribute of the action set of the at the function level, with the help of which you can set the value of a variable. Then we saw the action multi-set at the function level, with which you can set the multiple values of compound member variables in one call. And then we saw the action exchange at the function level, with the help of which you can exchange the values between two variables. Then we saw action increment, which can be used in on the variables of only type number, and with the help of which you can increment the values of the variable. And then the action decrement also we saw, and we saw that you can increment the value of the variable in the steps of user defined steps. And we saw the action decrement, which also acts upon the variable of type number, which decreases the value of the variable in the step given. If you have not given any step, then the default step is 1. Then we saw the attribute modifies, with help of which we can modify the value of the variable to the value specified at the field. And then we saw the action copy variable, with the help of which you can copy the value of the variable from one variable to another. Then we saw next we saw the list variable actions. So first we went starting with the adding of list variable of the elements to list variable, then deleting it, then how do we retrieve value from list variable, then how do we sort the list variable, and then how do we populate list from a collection, and how do we create collection from the variable, and we also saw some of the list variable specific functions. So how do we add elements to the list variable? We can use either list add. Through list add, you add elements to list variable using key, and with the help of action list addx, you add elements to a list variable without a key, and with the help of action list expand, you just add empty elements to the list variable, and the number of elements added will be specified as in the count. And then we went to list variable deletion, that the action list delete is used to delete elements of the list variable based on the key formula. If you have not given a key formula, entire list variable gets deleted. And action list delete x, with the help of which you can delete the elements based on index, and in the absence of index, entire list variable gets deleted. Then we saw how to retrieve values from list variable, starting with list value. With the help of list value, you can retrieve value from the element of the list variable using key formula, and with the help of function list value x, you can retrieve value of the elements of the list variable based on the index. And then we can also use hash operator and dotted notation syntax and retrieve the value from the list variable. Then we went to the looping construct for in and for each. So for in, this particular looping construct is used to iterate over the values of the list variable, and only those with list variables which are added with the help of key. So the syntax follows like for in colon, you give the iterator variable which holds the key, and then the list variable name. So all of those elements which are added to the list variable based on key, only those elements will be iterated with the help of for each looping construct. And then we went to the sorting of list variable. We started with the list keys. We know that the default sorting order of the list variable is, or elements of the list variable is the order of insertion. So if you want to change that sorting order, you can use list key sort, list value sort, or list reset sort. So first we go through list key sort. So with the help of which user can sort the elements of the list based on the key. So you can ask what happens if the element is not added with the help of key. So then what happens is, if the element is not added with the help of key, then those elements will be sorted in their insertion order. So you can sort the with the help of list key sort action, you can sort the elements either in ascending or descending order of the key. Then we have and we also saw in list key sort, we can override the key data type. If the key data type by default is string, but you can say number and override that key data type, and based on the number data type, the elements of the list variable can be sorted. So next we saw list value sort. So this allows the user to sort the elements based on the value. So in this list value sort, you give ascending descending sort, you give the key data type and the member specification also. So in this particular list value sort, if there are two elements or two or more elements with the same value, then those elements are sorted based on their key data type, based on their key, and in case those elements do not have a key, then the elements are sorted based on their insertion order. Then we went to list reset sort. So if you want to reset your elements or the sorting order of your elements of the list variable to its order of insertion, you can use list reset sort. Then we went to populating the list from a collection. That is, using the action list fill, you can fill the elements of your list variable with the values from a collection. So in which the key formula, value formula are evaluated in context to the object in the collection. Then we went to how to form a collection from these variables. So with the help of data source attribute of the variable, you can form the collection from this variable. So you should say data source colon variable and give the variable name. So with the help of which you can bring together all the values of your list variable, so that you can use it or manipulate it later. Either you can use it like a table, or you can repeat your line over the collection. So all the default collection functionalities can be used here. And then we went to list variable specific functions. So we started with the list key with help, where you can find the key of the specific element with the index. And then we went to the list index, where you can find the index of the specific key of the element of the list variable. And we went to list count, which gives the number of elements that is present in the list variable. And then we went to list find, with the help of which you can find out if a specific key exists or not in the list variable. And then we went to the list value find, where you can check if the certain value is present in the list variable or not. So that's it. We are now at the end of the second session of the variable framework.